So Julie, it's so lovely to be here to chat about your book and your audiobook Homework.
Thank you.
I wanted to kick off with where the book sort of starts, which is Mary Poppins, your first ever film, which Walt Disney got you into. So could you describe what it was like to work with him on a film for your first time?
Well, you know, he was the huge boss of the whole studio. And of course, he did come and ask me if I would be interested in coming to Hollywood to see the designs and hear the songs for the movie. And at the time, I was pregnant with my daughter that actually helped me co-write this book. And I told him, I said, "Oh, Mr. Disney, I would be so thrilled, but I can't, I'm pregnant." And he said, "Well, it's okay, we'll wait for you." And I little knew how long it took to get a film on its feet. And by the time it was ready, I'd had my baby and we all went to Hollywood and that's how it began. But he was kindly and very smart, very twinkly personality. But in fact, left us alone from choice. I think he knew how hugely important he was. And Walt coming on the set was like, you know, I don't know, Gandhi coming to visit or something like that. I can't think of a better analogy. So he didn't come down that often, but he was always present if we wanted him for anything. We'd see him about the lot when we were there, and there were lots of visits to either his office, his studio, his home, the commissary, that kind of thing.
And the book is packed with wonderful sort of behind the scenes anecdotes.
Well, I hope people like that. That's what I wanted to show, that it isn't just, opening nights and glamour and tiaras and red carpets and things like that.
There's one anecdote I love where you're describing the clay that they used to create the dirt and the soot for Step in Time in Mary Poppins.
Yes.
And it had an unintended brilliant effect on your skin.
Amazing effect in that I had a very unpleasant wart on my hand, which had been there for years. And in all the scenes where we were dancing with the chimney sweeps and things, they put a lot of what they call fuller's earth on us to look like soot. And all of a sudden I noticed that this big lump on my thumb was going down, and I could only attribute it to the fuller's earth that we were using. So I highly recommend it for getting rid of warts.
A brilliant unexpected discovery.
Yes.
And on The Sound of Music as well, you get to hear in the book or read that some of the scenes that look very tranquil were maybe not so much. For example, the opening scene,
right,
shot from a helicopter. That wasn't as serene as it looks.
Well, it was a very, very brief moment, but it really, every time we shot that scene, that very, very plucky cameraman who was in the helicopter, hanging out of it really with a camera strapped to his chest. Every time we shot that one particular walk toward camera with the spin at the end of it that I make in the field, every time we finished the take, he would go back to his position and I would go back to mine. We'd do the shot again and again to be sure that we had extra ones in the bank and that we'd gotten focus right and things like that. And of course, the downdraft from the jet of the helicopter just leveled me into the grass so many times that I finally got a little bit ticked off about it and kept saying, "Could you not go wider, please?" But he couldn't hear me, of course, because of the noise. I just got a thumbs up and on we went with another take.
And there was a lot of waiting around for the weather with The Sound of Music as well.
Huge amount, yes. Someone forgot to mention to our producers that Salzburg has, I think it's Europe's 7th highest annual rainfall or something like that. I don't mean to dispel any tourism because we certainly had a lot of rain that summer, but I don't know if anybody else did.
And in some of the free time you were doing little sing-alongs and you created a little group that you called the Vocalzones?
Yes, Vocalzones are a wonderful sort of pastel that you can use if you're feeling a bit hoarse and things like that. So they claim that Caruso used to use them as well. So we, as in order to while away the time, we would do harmony and sing songs, and a whole gang of us, and we called ourselves the Vocalzones.
And putting the book together, there's lots of diary extracts in there.
Yes, well, I used to keep diaries as a child, and then began again in about the mid-60s. And boy, am I glad I did, because there were so many memories that I would have forgotten otherwise. And I could quote from them literally.
And when you and your daughter Emma were going back through them for the book, was there anything that stood out to you, any sort of extracts?
Not extracts, but what did stand out for me was I suddenly became aware of just how hard I was working. Because when you're in the middle of it, or you're busy getting through it, you don't have much time to think about it. Afterwards, reading those diaries, I thought, my God, we worked hard. And we did.
You mentioned in the book as well your therapist who you spoke to about your childhood, but also because you were working so hard and trying to provide for everyone else. So how useful was that to have that person that you could go to separate from everyone else?
Well, extremely useful. I consider myself very, very lucky that I, made the time and could afford to go, and that I had a wonderful gentleman who knew me very, very well and was able to help me, because I think it cleared up so much garbage in my head, and I think was and hopefully am a better mum because of learning so much and being a better wife, and just generally getting rid of what I didn't need and retaining what was useful.
And there's a story in here which I adored, which I'm not going to give away, but it's how your late husband, Blake Edwards, and you had a connection to lilacs, which is such a beautiful story.
I can't even talk about it. I don't think, it's a little risque, but...
But was that a connection that, you know, those early days with Blake that you describe in the book, with those sort of connections and those little things you did together, did they carry on throughout your relationship?
Oh, of course they did. Every birthday, every anniversary, there were lilacs everywhere, on the cake, in flowers, and God knows what.
I can't wait for everyone to read about that bit. It's just such a nice,
well, there
nice
are many
moment.
Episodes like that in the book that are so delicious, and he was the most charismatic gentleman, wonderful writer, wonderful film director, very mercurial man in so many ways. He suffered a great deal too from depression, which I write about, but made me laugh so hard so many times, wickedly, devilishly humorous.
And you've, of course, narrated this for the audiobook, so it's your voice behind all of your words. What was that experience like?
Rather interesting and daunting, because you think you've finished your book and you think, well, I've edited it now, 6 or 8 times and I've done the best I can. And then you start speaking the book and talking, and you realize that you didn't quite choose the right word, and you wished you'd used that and cut that sentence a little more short. And happily, the book hadn't quite gone to press, so I was able to sort of bring the two together, so to speak.
Tweak here and there.
Yes, thank heavens. But also, reading it aloud is another experience altogether. Writing it is one thing, but then kind of admitting it vocally out loud is another.
And I just wanted to ask you finally, of your life and career so far, is there anything that you really hope that people will remember you for?
Oh my. Well, I remember, and I hope people will, I particularly remember the joy of giving these amazing films and things that came into my life. I'm the lucky person that was asked to do all this. And so for me, I was given so many gifts that way, and I hope, if possible, that I was able to give some of those back to people who love movies, who love theatre, who love recordings. How lucky can a girl get?
Well, thank you, Julie. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. For me too.